This is Matthew Kratters, Bitcoin University. Today I want to answer the question, can government seize your Bitcoin? This is a question from ex-felon. Just curious, if Bitcoin is so secure, then how does it get seized? Why isn't anybody just able to seize any Bitcoin? The answer to this is the old saying, not your keys, not your coins. When you receive Bitcoin at a Bitcoin address like this, often begin with BC1Q, that Bitcoin that's received at that address is locked to that address and can only be moved by signing and broadcasting a transaction that moves the Bitcoin to a different Bitcoin address, either to an address controlled by you, i.e. you have the private key to that address, or to an address controlled by someone else, i.e. they have the private key to that address. In this case, this would be an example of where you're buying something from someone else. They give you the goods or service, and then you send Bitcoin to an address that they control. Now, control of Bitcoin is defined by whether you have the private key to that address where the Bitcoin is sitting. In order to sign a transaction that then can move the Bitcoin to a different Bitcoin address, you need to have the correct private key to sign with. These private keys are normally managed by your Bitcoin wallet, which is able to derive billions of Bitcoin addresses and their respective private keys, all from 12 English words that you keep hidden. If your wallet ever breaks, either a hardware wallet or software wallet, if it ever breaks or gets lost, you can then restore all of these Bitcoin addresses and their respective private keys to a new wallet by simply entering those 12 words into that new wallet. Warning, never, ever, ever share your 12 English words with anyone. Never take a picture of them or send them in a text or email or otherwise expose them to the internet, because anyone who has these words in a certain order can take all of the Bitcoin that is stored in addresses associated and controlled by that seed or recovery seed. These 12 words in a certain order are actually a representation of a very long random binary number. So you should also never pick your own words. These words are taken from the BIP39 English word list, and you also have them for different languages like French and Czech and Chinese and Italian and Korean and Japanese as well. But you should never pick your own 12 words out of this. You should use a hardware wallet that uses true randomness to generate this very large random number, which is then converted to a human readable version, which would be the 12 words that you memorize. So back to the question, if Bitcoin is so secure, then how does it get seized? Why isn't anybody just able to seize any Bitcoin? Well, we can see here, for example, here's a Bitcoin address, BC1QRY, etc. And it currently holds almost 334 Bitcoin, current value almost $28 million. If it were easy to hack Bitcoin, if it could be hacked, this would be a very good place to go where you can make $28 million by hacking it. But just displaying this public Bitcoin address does not give anybody the ability to steal your Bitcoin. You need the private key to that Bitcoin address. So Bitcoin cannot be hacked. You cannot work backwards from this Bitcoin address to the private key that controls it. Bitcoin cannot be hacked, but you can be hacked. For example, somebody can put a gun to your head and threaten you or your family unless you tell them your 12-word seed. This would be an argument not to have it memorized, in which they can then, if they have your 12-word seed, they can enter into a Bitcoin wallet and use it to send all the Bitcoin to addresses that they have the private keys to. Or, for example, a judge can order you to turn over your Bitcoin to the government. In other words, to send it to a Bitcoin address that's controlled by the government. They cannot do the actual transaction themselves if they don't have your private keys or seed, but what they can do is make your life miserable in real life, because we all inhabit human bodies that exist in meat space, that exist in real life, and that can be subject to pressure or violence from governments or criminals. They can make your life miserable with fines, arrest, jail, torture, etc., depending what country you're in. Governments and criminals can also raid your house and rip it apart until they find your Bitcoin private keys, your wallet, or your seed. Now note that this is not just a problem when you hold Bitcoin, which is perhaps easier to hide than most assets. Governments and other criminals can also seize your house or car. They can easily freeze your bank account or brokerage account. They can raid your home and take your gold or your coin collection, etc. Now, in the U.S., we have certain protections against unreasonable searches and seizures provided by the Fourth Amendment, but law enforcement can obviously still raid your house if they're able to get a search warrant from a judge to raid your house. If you're finding this video helpful so far, I just ask you to help to support this channel's educational mission. Hit the subscribe button, that really helps the channel. Leave a like, leave a comment, question, suggestion for a future video, and share this video with a friend or family member. You can also be really stupid and make it really easy for the government to seize your Bitcoin. In this case from a couple years ago, from 2021, there was all this talk that the FBI had hacked Bitcoin, but what in fact had happened was they used a seizure warrant or a search warrant, a seizure warrant to seize Bitcoin private keys that were being stored on a computer server in Northern California. So in this case, the hackers were storing their private keys online, which is definitely a no-no if you don't want someone to be able to take your Bitcoin. So the government, the FBI, was able to get a seizure warrant and take the private keys off this server and then use it to move the Bitcoin to an address that they controlled. But normies and regular mainstream media will always tell you that the FBI hacked Bitcoin, but that's not what happened. Rather, they were able to get their hands on the Bitcoin private keys to these addresses. A few people have been asking about this Puerto Rico case, market anarchy, typing here in a comment. Wanted to know your thoughts on the pending case in Puerto Rico. A court has demanded a man hand over his private keys to 191 Bitcoin and is charging him $10,000 a day for noncompliance. To have the potential of a landmark case but hasn't received much attention from the Bitcoin community, my take is that this is compelled speech and should be protected by the First Amendment. Judge disagrees, etc. So I was able to find this case online. These are some tweets by Mallard Beekman. Breaking, a man was held in contempt in federal court for refusing to surrender 119.65 Bitcoin that was subject to a seizure order. He has to pay $10,000 for each day he doesn't comply. The FBI found the defendant's laptop and noticed Ledger software on it last year. The court issued a search warrant for the Bitcoin held at this certain address. And instead of transferring the Bitcoin to the government, the court found that Reynoso, this person who's in trouble, transferred the Bitcoin instead to other wallets right after the government ordered him to transfer to their wallets. Because Bitcoin is an open and transparent ledger, it was trivial for the government to prove Reynoso's willful disregard for the seizure order. The court rejected Reynoso's argument that the seizure order violated the Fifth Amendment. The court noted that in the United States versus Apple Mac Pro Comp, the Third Circuit upheld a contempt order where a defendant failed to decrypt his laptop as ordered. In other words, to put in his password to open up the computer so people could view what was in there, so the government could view what was in there. In that case, in that Apple case, the defendant was held in civil confinement for 4 years for his refusal to comply with the decryption order. Importantly, in this case, this Bitcoin case in Puerto Rico, Reynoso's Bitcoin withdrawal from the address at issue proved that he could have complied with the court's seizure order. This is why the boating accident defense holds no water once you start spending your Bitcoin. I looked up this case at findlaw.com and was able to find this text. Reynoso has the ability to comply with the warrant. Reynoso is the owner of the wallet identified in the warrant. Accordingly, compliance is possible by transferring the Bitcoin to the government-controlled wallet. The transfer may be accomplished with Reynoso's Ledger hardware wallet. Reynoso emptied his Bitcoin wallet immediately after defense counsel received notice of the warrant. He cannot now claim that compliance is no longer feasible. Any difficulty in recovering the 119.65 Bitcoin is self-inflicted. And as Econo Alchemist points out here, some of you might be surprised to hear about this, but your boating accident isn't going to cut it. Now, for those of you new to the space, boating accident is sort of a meme that refers to this idea that you lost your hardware wallet when you went fishing on a boat. It fell and is now at the bottom of the sea. And so you don't have your private keys and you don't have a backup of your 12-word recovery seed. So your Bitcoin is gone. And this can be an excuse that people use saying, oh, sorry, government, sorry, IRS, my Bitcoin is gone. That's fine. But as I pointed out in previous videos, and as Econo Alchemist points out in that tweet, if the Bitcoin ever moves from that address, as it did in Reynoso's case in the future, that would be a sign that you actually do have the private keys to that and that you were lying to the government. And that's when you may get a knock on the door. So the boating accident excuse is a funny meme, but doesn't really work in real life when you're in trouble. BTC5563 writes, Matthew, Bitcoin is now unsafe under U.S. jurisdiction. They recently incarcerated someone for 4 years for not providing seeds to his wallet, and then referring to the same case, and now someone in Puerto Rico is being fined $10,000 per day for not providing their seeds. I would say this is not true. Bitcoin is just an asset like any other asset. It's perhaps much more safe in the U.S. than in most jurisdictions. But if you're going to commit a crime, your Bitcoin can be considered part of your estate, part of your holdings, and the government can obviously go after it. Though in this case of Reynoso, I looked up one of the Bitcoin addresses associated with it, and it didn't seem that there was any Bitcoin sitting there. So perhaps someone should do a little bit more digging. People also sent me this article, California man sentenced for using Bitcoin to launder dark web MDMA, in other words, ecstasy profits. According to Texas police, this person would import MDMA from Germany, sell it on various dark web markets, accepting payment in Bitcoin, and then he would allegedly trade the Bitcoin stored in seller accounts for U.S. currency and launder the dirty money through hundreds of transactions and dozens of financial accounts. Conclusion, obviously, Bitcoin does not give you the legal right to commit crimes. Don't commit obvious crimes using Bitcoin. Don't do terrible things like selling illegal drugs or theft or sex trafficking or terrorism or something like this. Be a good human being. But Bitcoin does offer protections as well from the overreach of evil governments. Once you get in trouble with the law, the government can go after all of your assets, including your Bitcoin. But the nice thing about Bitcoin, if you live in a country where it eventually becomes illegal to do normal human things like live your life, provide for your family, protect your family, etc., Bitcoin offers the best way to leave that country with your wealth intact, as many Ukrainian refugees found out who were able to leave the country as the war started with their Bitcoin. Unlike real estate, unlike physical gold or cash, unlike stocks, bonds, digital cash, and a bank account, Bitcoin is highly portable and can be moved across a border by just storing 12 words in your head. And this is not something that you can do with stocks or bonds or cash, and certainly not with physical gold or cash. These will be taken from you at the airport or at the border crossing. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video. And let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.